Coming up on Over a Barrel.
Matt has opened the door up now for the national average to fall to its lowest level since March.
Over a Barrel starts right now. Welcome to the program on Over a Barrel. I'm your co-host, Matt McLean, along with Patrick DeHaan, coming to you from two separate parts of the country. And unfortunately, both of them seem to be cold at this point, right?
At the pump, Patrick, at least those gas price temps are down, too.
I was just going to say, one of the things that we can discuss in this week's program is something that I am all happy about, which is the falling price. I'm seeing red all over my screen, indicating falling prices for oil, natural gas, like wholesale gasoline. Everything seems to be dropping in price.
Yeah.
You could make my day. Talk to us about this. Let's get right into it. We've got a lot to discuss, right?
That
Talk
pressure,
to us,
Matt. You know, it is a lot of red, and it's not just the fall colors that are quickly disappearing here in Chicago, but as you mentioned today, energy markets have come under a lot of pressure, and rather incredibly, Matt, we are just $1.90 a barrel away from hitting that Department of Energy $79 a barrel price that could trigger more repurchases into the nation's strategic petroleum reserve. That's where West Texas Intermediate, or WTI crude oil, is. It's at $80.90 a barrel. Actually just ticked down to $80.89. Brent crude oil is at about $85 a barrel this afternoon. As you mentioned, natural gas down about 2.5%. And I was going to quickly navigate over to the Climate Prediction Center. And there it is. Look at that. Cold weather is likely lifting. Whenever we see a swing, Matt, in the Climate Prediction Center temperature outlook, it can swing natural gas because, of course, cold weather is going to cause a lot more demand. But now with the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook from the CPC, it looks like much of the country is going to be above average. The Northeast still going to be slightly below average in terms of air temps, but that's probably behind natural gas price dropping. And the price of RBOB, reformulated blend stock for oxygen blending. RBOB is simply gasoline. The RBOB price down a couple of cents a gallon here today. And that, Matt, has opened the door up now for the national average to fall to its lowest level since March. We're at $3.41 for the average national, the average gas price, I should say, the national average, $3.41 a gallon, down 10 cents from the last week, Matt. And GasBuddy today counts 38,000 gas stations in the United States under $3 a gallon. By the way, that's about 25% of the stations in the nation.
I actually saw prices here locally where I am at that were actually falling down to $2.92. I saw one for $2.88 a gallon 24 hours ago. I was so happy. I may or may not have jumped in the air and clicked my heels together in the middle of the parking lot. May not.
Did you have red shoes, and were they like sparkly red shoes?
No, I did not have red shoes. Nothing sparkly. I was wearing a standardized tennis shoes, but still,
I did go home. Speaking of, the tapping shoes, I did go home to Michigan over the weekend, Matt. And on the way home, to Chicago, I encountered one of the cheapest gas prices in Michigan. I think it's actually the cheapest station in Michigan, and I paid $2.80. So let's duke it out. What was your last price that you paid? Was it lower than $2.80?
No, it was $2.88.
Oh, and by the way, it was $2.80 at the retail sign. Oh. But after my GasBuddy price, it was $2.57 a gallon.
Oh my gosh.
So I do love pointing that out.
Ears.
Oh, it's wonder $2.57. That's like 2019 levels. Now, I will say that, Matt, not everyone has access to those low prices. And so all the Californians that are yelling at their speakers right now, screaming at the top of their lungs, we see you. But the good news, Matt, for California is the most expensive state, California, is now seeing 6 stations at $3.99 a gallon or lower. The statewide average in California now $5.19. Matt, that's down over 83 cents a gallon in the last month. So everyone loves to talk about gas prices always go up faster than they come down. But in this instance, in California, prices are actually coming down faster then they went up.
This makes my caramel latte go down just that much more smoothly. I just want to put this all out. I am extremely happy to hear now the goal, as you know, I want 99 cents a gallon. Can we pull this off before Christmas?
I
can ask, right?
If you tell and successfully get 90% of Americans to stop driving, then yes, then we can get there. But unless you can get 90% of Americans to abruptly stop driving completely overnight, we're not going to get there because we need a reason to get there. And economics, that is the balance of supply and demand, is not going to get tipped that far in one direction unless something drastic happens on the other side of the scale, basically a big drop in demand.
Well, we don't necessarily want the big drop in demand because that would indicate something's terribly wrong.
Pretty much.
Which, I don't want that. I don't want anything bad. I just want good. I want good things to happen at this point.
Well, and that's a great point, Matt, because it leads into the line and the information that typically during a healthy economy, you generally don't see a long-lasting period of low prices because usually a strong and healthy economy will lead to higher consumption.
Yeah, and unemployment is quite down. In fact, even the numbers for this past month show the economy is actually moving right along, even better than people expected. We've got a lot of things going on with all of that. And so I am really surprised, personally, you're probably not, to see the price of gasoline continuing to fall, especially with all of the geopolitics that we are seeing going on globally with Israel and Ukraine and Russia and China.
There's a lot
Iran,
there. I mean,
oh my. Yeah, I mean, there's so much out there. The Israel-Hamas war.
There's a lot of potential. You know, but so far smooth sailing and knock on wood, I think that's the exact thing we said last week, Matt, is that the external factors are relatively muted, and every week we go, that there's still activity in the Middle East, that it is not further destabilized, gives the market some reassurance that, hey, potentially the situation might not destabilize. And Matt, though we've talked about the price of gasoline here, let's do a little inflation watch or disinflation watch. Prices still are above average at 341, but the national average, Matt, is down 34 cents in the last year. Looking at the price of diesel, Matt, there are, let's count them, 17 states where diesel prices are over $1 a gallon lower today than they were a year ago. And let me give you the top 5 here. Vermont is seeing retail price of diesel $1.45 per gallon lower than a year ago. Rhode Island $1.36 lower. Connecticut $1.35 lower. But every single state, Matt, is at least 20 cents lower for diesel than a year ago. And boy, looking here, 42 of the nation's 50 states are at least 50 cents a gallon lower today for diesel than a year ago. So this is not just a gasoline price party where prices are falling, but diesel prices compared to a year ago are much, much lower.
Yeah, I am extraordinarily pleased as we are moving in toward the holidays, and I am very hopeful for everyone's sake that we continue that downward trend for Thanksgiving, which we are now officially into November, and Thanksgiving is just honestly a few weeks away.
You got the turkey in the oven yet or not?
The turkey is not yet in the oven. It's not even yet purchased. But the fact of the matter is the price of gas is falling down. My question to you is, as prices go down, is this going to have that trickle down effect for even prices potentially on the store shelves and other aspects, because shipping suddenly is falling in price?
Well, I'm hopeful, Matt, that it will. There are some caution signs, though, with diesel. Keep in mind, as we've discussed here on the program before, that diesel is essentially the same product as heating oil, and heating oil is used as the primary way to heat homes in much of the northeastern United States. So that's where Mother Nature does come into this, Matt. And keep in mind, refineries, which are getting close to wrapping up their maintenance season, they aren't done yet. And if there's like a brief cold spell, now I just looked at CPC data and it doesn't look like there will be, but that's the wild card. So compared to a year ago, and by the way, that's what the Bureau of Labor Statistics looks at many times is, hey, compare a price today to a year ago. We're going to see a lot of improvement on the price of energy this October and November compared to a year ago. But, there's still the potential that, cold weather or the Middle East especially could hit the price of diesel, because diesel, Matt, unlike gasoline, diesel, there's not as much production capability of diesel in the country than there is gasoline. And that's just the way things work, because a lot of the crude oil that goes into refineries is light, right? We've talked about oil quality in the past. And so when you put more light crude oil in your refinery, you get more light crude oil out. And there's only so much you can tinker with science on changing that to produce more diesel. So let's just say that, there are still some things we'll keep an eye on. Of course, we'll keep you updated on those things here at the Over a Barrel Show. But Matt, there's a lot to be really happy about, especially as I think now about that turkey going in the oven for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, most definitely. That is the kind of the hope, because a lot of times I have seen situations where prices start to go up, unfortunately, in November and December. Now, I recognize the normal trend, as you have talked about in past programs, indicate that gas prices typically don't spike this time of year. I have seen it a few times, unfortunately, but it's been under extenuating circumstances, I think, on a global scale. And that's where in the back of my mind, I've got these concerns where I'm looking at all the tabs that I've got on my screens about war here and war there and this country and that country duking it out. And it's like, we have some extenuating circumstances. We have a lot of circumstances going on that creates a lot of uncertainty all the way around. So as we move into the holidays, it sounds like, at least fingers crossed for the moment, we're not necessarily going to pay out the nose at the pump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. And by the way, Matt, it was just last year that we did see a brief spike in the month of October that then almost immediately receded. So, you mentioned that you have seen prices going up. Last year, they spiked significantly in October, and that really led into November. But that also led prices back into a free fall that lasted basically the entirety of mid-November through the end of the year. We got a really big cold spell last year just before Christmas. For those that don't remember, it was like sub-zero temperatures from, Colorado, from the Rockies, all the way down to Texas just before winter, which kicked a lot of refineries offline. There was a refinery fire in Commerce City, remember, that caused prices to go up briefly. So, there are some things to keep an eye on. Like I said, Mother Nature could be a driver of some of those factors. But for now, the prevailing news is great, Matt. Every state has seen a price drop in the last month. As I refresh my data, I just want to be 100% sure that nobody's up. Yes, indeed. Everyone's down. The smallest decrease from a month ago is Hawaii at 12 cents. But as I mentioned, California almost 83 cents lower than a month ago. Arizona 73 cents lower. Nevada 58 cents lower than a month ago. And Matt, by the way, Americans now spending about $140 million less on gasoline every day than just a month ago. And at last check, there were over 33 states where you could find at least one gas station below $3 a gallon, Matt. So that's really great news that, these $2.99 prices are not just hiding out in one or two states, but they're readily available in a lot more states than that.
Yeah, and that's the hope, because I've noticed even, and I say that's the hope, quite honestly, because gas prices have that tendency to impact almost every other facet of an economy that you can imagine, whether it's delivery charges or food prices or basically so many things, because we are so dependent upon moving products back and forth across our nation, and that requires some sort of fuel. And for right now, that is gasoline or diesel, as the case may be, in most aspects. Mm-hmm. Diesel prices, are they continuing to move up like they were last week, or where are we seeing diesel prices at?
Yeah, as I load the latest data, Matt, we are seeing a little bit of a decline in diesel prices over the last week. The average now for diesel, as we sit here and talk, gasoline, the average is $3.41. For diesel, the average has declined to about $4.43. And as recently, Matt, as last week, Tuesday, the national average for diesel was at $4.50. So we've gone down about 7 cents a gallon in the last week. Motorists should absolutely, by the way, be shopping around. Matt, I was driving back from Michigan, as I mentioned earlier, and saw $2.80 gas at that same station. The price for diesel was $3.99, not but 2 miles down the road. As I got out of that low price pocket and crossed into Indiana, the price for gasoline was 44 cents higher for gasoline, but diesel prices had jumped to $4.64, a 65 cent jump. So especially if you're filling up a semi, unless you're paying a pre-agreed price. Diesel prices are all over, Matt. I was seeing $3.99. I was seeing $4.29. I was seeing $4.64. Just ridiculous, the amount of discrepancy between both gasoline and diesel prices. I saw a $2.80, and Matt, I got to Chicago here less than 100 miles down the road from that station. That was $2.80. My local station here is $3.65
For gasoline or for diesel?
For gasoline.
Gotcha.
So I went from a gas station in Southwest Michigan at $2.80. I pulled into my place in Chicago, and that gas price was $3.65. So timing is everything. Using the Gas Buddy app, of course, I'm going to plug the Gas Buddy app here to find those low prices. But it's been amazing, Matt. I've had people on Twitter, any follower at Gas Buddy Guy, that's my account there. Thanks for sharing your experiences. But gentleman from Southern California showed a screenshot yesterday to me. One station, I believe I have the prices right. One station was $5.69, and there was $1 a gallon discrepancy in like literally 1 or 2/10 of a mile.
Wow.
So literally $1 a gallon difference in 1 or 2/10 of a mile.
What is is that just because the stations are, one just got a fresh shipment of fuel in and that's the price difference, or what do you generally, and I realize that's a specific case, but generally speaking, what causes such a huge discrepancy on something like that?
I mean, point blank, they're probably paying within 10 or 20 cents a gallon of what those stations are paying. They're probably paying a pretty similar price. It could be 10 or 20 cents a gallon higher or lower. But a lot of that difference, 75% of that is simply just the agenda. If one station, Matt, is probably holding its prices up, hoping to make a little bit more money. Another station could be doing well by its customers and lowering prices. So a lot of that is simply the margin that a station wants to make. One station is simply just wanting to pull in more margin, and they're willing to be less competitive. So, you can't do anything about those higher price stations so much as you can avoid them by shopping around using the Gas Buddy app. Pay what's a fair price, not anything above that.
Yeah, and the person that just paid more than $1 more per gallon as they're driving down the street after they've already done so, kicking themselves. And there's no refund. It's not like you can go back and say, please take the fuel back out of my vehicle. It doesn't work that way. So you got what you got.
I don't know if what's a worse feeling, opening the oven and seeing like a turkey that's, 3 hours past its prime, or driving down the street, 30 seconds later and seeing a gas price that's 50 or 80 cents lower.
I mean, we've all been there. I mean, let's just be honest. We've all been there. Like I did that crossing from one state into the next multiple years back, and 4 miles down the interstate, it was about $1.30 a gallon less.
Hold on. So Matt, my co-host, didn't readily have Gas Buddy available all those years ago, huh?
Well, this may have been before Gas Buddy's time.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
This may have been before Gas Buddy's time. This was, I think, in 2000 or 2001 or 2, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay, all right. Well, that's that's fair enough. I was going to say, Matt, the last time I didn't check for my purchase before I filled up was about 2001. So, by the way, that's how old Gas Buddy is now. We are celebrating 23 years. The app has been around for about 13 or 14 years. So, thankfully, Matt, it's been a long time that you've been able to abstain from overpaying for fuel.
Oh, these days, I refuse. It's just ingrained in me. Find the cheapest station and go.
And then use the Gas Buddy card, right?
By far,
we layer up.
Oh yeah, layer up the savings in every aspect. No question whatsoever.
And then the loyalty program. Oh, Matt, that's by the way, that's how I layered on my Gas Buddy card, and that's how I got the price of $2.57 a gallon when the retail price was $2.80.
You drive for free, don't you?
Oh, man, I wish. That's just, there's no job. Even if you work for oil companies, you don't get free gasoline. Wouldn't that be like the best benefit? As if you could
best perk ever.
I mean, well, it's the most expensive perk ever too.
It is. You're not wrong. Hey, very quickly during this program, we did have a bit of I will say what they are calling a breaking news update. As you were listening to this podcast, you may have already heard it elsewhere, but during the recording of this podcast, we have just been informed that the Federal Reserve is planning to leave the interest rates unchanged despite the stubborn inflation. That obviously, it's a very hot topic that we're discussing right now.
Yeah.
But that they have decided to leave the rates unchanged despite the stubborn inflation that has resisted the central bank's fight to cool price increases. The move allows previous rate increases to take a greater hold of the economy and grants the central bank time to assess whether another hike will be necessary. So that have you ever noticed whenever they've raised the price of interest rates over the past year or so, does that really have a serious impact on oil and gas prices?
Oh, yeah. Well, Matt, I'll give you an example this morning, and some of this may not be the report, but we also had a government report come out for energy. But absolutely, Matt, if it's positive news and the stock market's off to the races, oil prices usually follow in tandem. But this morning, Matt, oil prices were up $2 a barrel. Right now, they're down 10 cents a barrel. So that's been quite a shift just today. They were up significantly this morning to $83. Now we're at $80.93 a barrel at this exact moment. So, some of that could be because of disappointing comments, but absolutely, Matt, markets pick up on what the Fed says. They look at every little comment. I mean, we're to the point now where you do a before and after photo of what the Fed says, and you look at all the statements that were struck through or changed. And that is, people are incessantly looking at every possible degree of tonality change and what the Fed is saying to get a hint for what they may be doing in the months ahead. So absolutely, it does drive markets.
Yeah, but that's good to know. So we will be keeping a very watchful eye on all of those things as well. So certainly some good news there with regard to the fact, because interest rates are quite high, but that was an intentional thing to try to cool off the inflation, and it's kind of had some mixed results. I'm still paying far more for food than I did a year or 2 or 3 ago, and so is everybody else. And there's a lot of things out there. Mortgage rates, oh my goodness, very different. Now, it was almost artificially low to begin with, 0% and this, that, and the other. So you could get a mortgage rate for 2 or 3% on 30 years. And historically speaking, that is artificially quite low from the norm. We just seem to be a bit on the upper end of the high side now with interest rates. And it seems like a jolt because we had several years of low.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly to the point. Everyone asks, hey, why are gas prices still this way, or why are food prices still going up? And Matt, it has everything to do with the fact that the pendulum went from one side all the way over to the other very quickly, right? We went from a economy in recession, potentially depression, right? During COVID, everything shut down. The jobless rate surged to, what was it, 21% or something unemployment. And then, Matt, as the economy then started to swing wide open in 2021 and early 2022, then consumers started to spend, opening up their wallets once we started to see the coast was clear, only then to see Russia's war in Ukraine start very abruptly. And of course, Ukraine is a huge agricultural producer of crops, corn, soybeans, a lot of things. Russia's a huge player in commodities. So, Matt, we went from one side of the spectrum to another. And the Fed, the only way they could react to a sudden massive jolt like that is to ratchet up the pressure, to slow the growth down, to slow prices down. And that's why they're, everything, your interest rate, as you mentioned, the highest it's been since 2000?
Yeah.
Because the Fed has to go to an extreme to slow this economy down, or we're going to see these prices continue to ramp up.
Yeah, that's you took the words right out of my mouth in that regard as well. So, there's just a lot of moving pieces to really kind of keep an eye on. And, as we are recording, I'm just seeing a breaking news alert that Israel accidentally struck another camp again inside Gaza, where there were, innocent victims, or if you will, just the generalized population, which, as you know, stoked a lot of retaliation of several days ago from its adversaries. So we just have a lot to keep an eye on. Geopolitically as well, because all of these things have sometimes a direct or indirect impact on gas prices as well. It's what a time to live, be alive on this earth is kind of sometimes how I view things, because, for example, technology wise, 10 or 15 years ago, for you and myself to be able to record a podcast like this would have required equipment that, filled half of a room, so to speak. And been extraordinarily expensive. Now, It's very inexpensive, and you fit it on a single screen. So it's a great time to be alive, but it's also an interesting time because we have so much going on.
Yeah.
And I'm just thankful that we haven't figured out a way to do shrinkflation to gas prices yet, so that we're paying for like a half a gallon. Please don't anybody get any bright ideas.
I mean, that did come out a couple. You remember the station in Washington State decided to go to half gallon because I think that this was for racing fuel. Which, Matt, the octane I think is 105 because it's unleaded. And so racing fuel, the price was over $10. And of course, gas station signs, and equipment many times can only do 3 digits, or I would say 1 digit and then 2 decimals. And so they had to sell by the half gallon temporarily. It got everyone's attention because people freaked out that, hey, they're going to start doing this. But again, that was an extreme measure. But Matt, to your point, all of that is an increase in risk. Each attack that Israel has that has civilian casualties, there's an increased risk that another country may retaliate. I think it was Bolivia. One South African country recalled its ambassadors. And every time you have an attack, there is risk there. So we are not out of the woods. And one of these attacks, if it's disproportionate in terms of civilian casualties, there could be a response from somebody like Iran. There could be retaliatory strikes. So I think to your point, we still live in an unpredictable world.
That's the key, and we definitely want to keep tabs on it. And of course, if we ever need to do special podcasts, we always do those as well. And we've even done some live podcasts as needs warrant. So we always try to stay on top of things to make sure that everyone is kept up to date on everything. So there's a lot there that's going on, and of course, we'll be keeping you informed of everything as we go along. And I think that's pretty much. For the most part, Patrick, what do you think? That's going to, I think, for the most part, wrap up this particular episode. We got a lot going on, and we're going to keep our fingers to the pulse, so to speak, and watch it all. But you can get a hold of Patrick at what? Gas Buddy Guy, at Gas Buddy Guy.
Yeah,
you want to take a stab at mine
media?
Since you always
Over
have
a
fun
Barrel
with that?
Matt, right? Over a Barrel Matt, and of course we're on Facebook at Over a Barrel Show. Matt, I'll leave the audience with one piece of good news here, a prognostication on what we expect here going into the weeks ahead. Gas prices are going to keep falling, Matt, pretty much coast to coast. I think the national average could fall another 10 to 25 cents a gallon. So we'll leave it on a piece of good news. Thanks for joining us. Again, check us out on social. You can send us an email to podcast@gasbuddy.com. But until next time, we'll see you right back here.
Have a good one.